There is a part of you that operates beneath the surface of your daily life, a quiet presence that observes everything you do, yet rarely speaks in words. It is the version of you that has learned to stay hidden, the version that remembers all the things you tried to forget. It is the version that holds your impulses, your fears, your shame, your insecurities, your envy, your unspoken thoughts, your repressed desires. This silent force is what Carl Jung called the shadow, the concealed half of your mind that you do not present to the world, and often do not even present to yourself. Most people believe they are defined by their conscious personality, the polite face, the controlled behavior, the curated identity. But the truth is far more complex. What you consciously choose to show is only the surface. Beneath that surface lives an entire psychological ecosystem, filled with emotions and memories you have tucked away, not because they disappeared, but because acknowledging them felt too heavy, too frightening, too real. Think about how often you've said, "I'm fine," while something inside you was clearly not fine. Think about the moments you said, "It doesn't bother me," while a quiet sting lingered in your chest. Think about the times you told yourself you didn't care, but your mind kept circling the same thought over and over. These moments are not signs of weakness. They are signs that your shadow is speaking, even when you don't recognize the voice. The shadow is born not from evil, but from avoidance. It is shaped by every emotion you were told not to feel, every truth you were not allowed to express, every wound you were pressured to ignore. The moment you suppress a feeling, it doesn't disappear, it simply moves into the shadow. The moment you silence a part of yourself, it doesn't die, it hides. And everything that hides eventually tries to emerge. Imagine you're walking down a long hallway inside your own mind. Along the walls are doors labeled with comforting ideas, memories, dreams, logic, identity. You walk past them easily because they feel familiar. But at the very end of the hallway, there is a door with no label. Something about it feels heavier, older, untouched. You approach it, and suddenly you feel a pull, a strange mix of fear and curiosity. You know exactly what's behind that door, even without a name. It is the place where every unprocessed emotion sits in silence, waiting. It is the room where the things you didn't want to face have been living, organizing themselves into patterns, behaviors, reactions, impulses. It is your shadow. Most people spend their entire lives doing everything they can to keep this door closed. They distract themselves with work, entertainment, routines, relationships, addictions, anything to avoid the discomfort of opening that door. But ignoring your shadow does not erase it. In fact, the more you avoid it, the more it begins to influence your life in subtle, powerful ways. It becomes the source of your unexplained anger, your sudden irritation, your jealousy, your people-pleasing, your self-sabotage, your emotional numbness. What you suppress becomes the puppeteer behind your reactions. You may think you're in control of yourself, but the truth is this: the parts of you that you don't acknowledge are the parts that control you the most. Every time you overreact to something small, that is the shadow speaking. Every time you feel irrational jealousy, that is the shadow revealing insecurity. Every time you sabotage a good opportunity, that is the shadow expressing fear. Every time you shut down emotionally, that is the shadow protecting an old wound. The shadow is not trying to hurt you, it is trying to be heard. But hearing it requires courage, courage to look at yourself without judgment, without denial, without filters. Courage to admit that you are capable of darkness, not because you are bad, but because you are human. Courage to acknowledge that your personality is not one-dimensional, and neither is your morality. Courage to realize that your deepest patterns were not chosen consciously, they were shaped by experiences you did not understand at the time. If you look closely at the shadow, you will notice something surprising. It is not made of hatred, it is made of pain. It is not made of cruelty, it is made of fear. It is not made of evil, it is made of forgotten truths.
The shadow holds the experiences that overwhelmed you, the emotions you couldn't express, the versions of yourself you didn't feel safe being. And the longer it stays hidden, the heavier it becomes. Think about the times you felt jealous but pretended not to be. The shadow stored that emotion. Think about the moments you wanted validation but told yourself it didn't matter. The shadow remembered. Think about the times you swallowed your anger to avoid conflict. The shadow felt it. Think about the dreams you abandoned, the boundaries you didn't set, the words you should have said but didn't. The shadow collected all of them. And then, one day, something small triggers you, and suddenly all the stored emotions spill out. You snap at someone over nothing. You feel overwhelmed by something trivial. You shut down emotionally for reasons you can't explain. It feels random, but it isn't. The shadow doesn't erupt, it overflows. People often fear their shadow because they assume it contains only darkness. But the truth is more complex. The shadow also holds your suppressed strengths, your assertiveness, your creativity, your confidence, your boundaries, your voice. Many of the qualities you admire in others exist inside you, but they were buried by past experiences, criticism, or fear of judgment. When you explore your shadow, you don't just uncover your darkness, you uncover your power. To face the shadow is to sit with the version of yourself that you abandoned. It is to look at the forgotten parts of your identity and say, you are allowed to exist. It is to listen to your jealousy and hear the insecurity beneath it, to listen to your anger and hear the boundary beneath it, to listen to your fear and hear the desire for safety. The shadow is not an enemy, it is a language, and once you learn to speak it, you begin to understand yourself with clarity you have never had before. You start to see why certain people trigger you because they reflect a part of you that you haven't accepted. You start to understand why certain situations paralyze you because they awaken an old wound you never healed. You begin to notice patterns in your relationships, patterns in your reactions, patterns in your habits, and suddenly everything begins to make sense. You start to realize that your life has not been shaped by fate or luck or coincidence. It has been shaped by the unspoken parts of your own mind. The process of integrating the shadow is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest. It is about ending the war inside yourself, the war between who you are and who you pretend to be. It is about recognizing that your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, are not flaws. They are signals, and every signal has meaning. When you stop fighting your shadow, something incredible happens. You stop being triggered by everything. You stop repeating the same painful patterns. You stop needing other people's approval. You stop seeking validation from the world. You stop running from uncomfortable emotions. You stop fearing the truth. You stop performing and start living. You stop wearing masks and start being present. Your relationships become healthier because you're not projecting old wounds onto new people. Your goals become clearer because they're not controlled by fear or insecurity. Your mind becomes quieter because the internal conflict fades. And slowly, you begin to feel whole. The shadow was never your enemy. It was your unloved self waiting for you to come home. It was the version of you that carried the burden of silence, the weight of denial, the pressure of perfection. It was the part of you that knew your truth long before you were ready to accept it. And when you finally open that door, when you finally walk inside and see the shadow not with fear, but with compassion, you will understand something life-changing. The darkness you feared was simply the light you had abandoned. The goal is not to eliminate your shadow. The goal is not to purify yourself. The goal is not to become flawless. The goal is to become whole, to embrace the parts of yourself you once rejected, to reclaim the pieces of your identity you lost, to accept that you can be strong and fragile, loving and jealous, confident and insecure, brave and afraid. To understand yourself fully, not as a perfect being, but as a complete one. Because the moment you stop running from the darkness inside you, you stop running from yourself.